sound of a church or chapel bell. But I went to run a rescue shop within a yard of hell.
Turn your face to morning's blaze.
You can glean from just the reading of the text here that there are some issues in this church. Paul seems to be kind of coming at them in a corrective tone now. You remember I may have said in weeks past that the fun stuff is over in Corinthians. The mushy, God bless you and you're all saints and all that kind of stuff. And now Paul really gets to the corrective matters of this church. They were in sin in various ways, and Paul now is really going to start to tackle some of these issues one by one. And he starts here today with this tone of correction that's being introduced in this letter. I'll begin by reminding you, this is nothing new, you'll agree with me, I'm sure, that some sins are more tolerable than others. How about murder? You take murder in our culture, and that's one that hasn't really gained nationwide tolerance yet. Not like some other sins. Okay? We're not passing in Minnesota legislation whether or not it's okay in God's eyes for me to kill you. We're voting on other things. There are some other sins that are far less despicable in the eyes of the culture. I'll give you one example of that, and it's one that we're going to be dealing with today. How about pride? Pride is every bit a sin in God's eyes as murder is, but murder in our culture is frowned upon. That's good. I'm grateful for that. Pride in our culture is actually applauded. We're encouraged to have pride. But the Bible, when you do a thorough read, is really going to address this issue in a negative tone. And pride in God's eyes is not a good thing. It's a sin. And let me define for you or outline for you pride, what we're talking about in the Bible when we speak of pride. Pride would be varying levels of self-love, self-absorption, self-promotion, self-esteem. Do you notice the common denominator in all of those? What's the root word there? Well, self. It's arrogance. It's egotistical self-centeredness. That's what that is. It's all about you. You're always the most important factor in the equation, whatever equation it is. Whatever equation it is. If it's in the vocational realm, you're the most important factor in that equation. Your boss is second to you, and all other coworkers are third. If it's marriage, it's all about you. It has nothing to do with your spouse. It's my feelings, my wants, my desires. That's pride. Pride is any time that you, rather than God, are at the center of that equation. And I'll remind you here that when we speak of pride, we're not talking about extreme levels of self-centeredness. It's not when it gets to the extreme. We all know people who are extreme in their pride, right? These are you just see them. You see them when you know them. Walking down the street, strutting around like they own the place. They walk into a room and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Just thick with this arrogant kind of, all they talk about is themselves. All they do is knock others down. They're just, you don't even like being around them. But when we talk about pride, we're not talking about only when it gets to the level of annoying. We're talking about any level of self-love, self-promotion, egotistical self-centeredness. Any level, any degree. You put yourself in the center, you've knocked God out of the center so that you can be there, whether it's to a small degree or a great degree. That's bad. Who's supposed to be at the center of all things? God. Who's the big deal in every equation? God. When you make it you, that's pride. That's pride. No matter what degree it may be. And as I said, our culture applauds you for your pride. I mean, our culture is promoting self-esteem, high self-esteem. It's all about you. You're worth it. The world should revolve around you because you deserve it. All of this stuff that makes you think, yeah, that's what I thought too. And God comes along and goes, yeah, don't think that anymore. I mean, you'll go to prison for murder, but nobody's ever gone away for 10 years on first-degree pride. You know, no one's ever getting convicted for third-degree arrogance, you know. Weekend in jail, $10,000 fine. Nobody's getting in trouble for this. Our culture applauds you for it, pats you on the back for it, teaches you these things in school and promotes it through media and all the rest. It's sickening in God's eyes. Sickening. Because other sins get so much more negative publicity than pride, and I mean murder, and I mean homosexuality, and I mean pedophilia, you know, there's ones that get a lot of negative press in our culture. They're the ones we don't fully agree with yet. Because those get so much more publicity than pride, because of its covert nature, can actually become more dangerous and widespread in its destruction than any other sin. Pride, because it's covert, kind of secret, kind of hidden. No, it's not getting everybody's attention. Because pride is so covert, it actually becomes a little bit more dangerous than, I would say, even murder. And the thing that makes it more dangerous than murder is because murder stops when the murder is done. Unless, of course, in extreme cases like serial killers. But even still, it's only one man going about killing an individual here and there. Pride, however, increases exponentially if it's not stopped. If I'm proud, if I'm an arrogant individual, I can promote that in others, and it spreads like wildfire. Guys, pride is contagious. Oh, I would say highly, highly contagious. And you will be infected if you don't put a stop to it. So if we want to be careful about the spread of pride, we need to know how we can stop pride from spreading. There's an answer. First of all, pride is extremely destructive. I would go so far as to say it could be even more destructive than murder, for the simple reason that pride is the basis of all other sins. Satan was found with pride long before he was ever guilty of murder. Long ago, in a land far, far away, there was God and his congregation surrounded by angels screaming, "Holy, holy, holy!" And then there was one named Lucifer who was lifted up in pride in his heart, didn't like that God was worshipped, and he wanted to be at the center of the equation and have God removed. And he was banished. And his pride spread to a total of 1/3 of the rest of the angelic congregation, so that they were cast out too. One proud man spread like cancer, like lightning speed through the rest of the congregation. And they suffered the consequences as well. So we need to know how we can stop pride from spreading. And the answer for us is in the Bible, and I would even say that the answer for us is in our chapter today. I've just read it. Pride can be stopped, but never will pride be stopped with pride. Okay? Two wrongs don't make a... Go ahead. You got it. Two wrongs never make a right. Didn't your mama teach you that? Two wrongs don't make a right. So if there's pride, it will not be stopped with pride. It's impossible. It's like throwing water on a grease fire. I don't know how to stop a grease fire, but I know water isn't going to do it. Am I right? You could probably put this on YouTube and find some interesting videos. It will spread. Throwing water on a grease fire is like trying to stop pride with pride. It's going to spread. You're going to catch it. You're going to catch fire. Someone meets you with pride, and listen, have you ever met somebody like that? Just cocky and arrogant. If you're a guy, it happens on the basketball court. Just so you know. You get that one guy who's on the opposite team that just wants to trash talk, and it's just like, ugh, and then you want to beat him up. It's like, yeah, that's probably not the way to do it. There's a way to confront pride in somebody else that stops it rather than infects you. The only way to stop the spread of pride when you're met with it is with humility. That's the only way. The only way you're going to stop pride from spreading is with humility. Now you're wondering maybe, what's humility? I remember when I first came to church, I thought humility was embarrassment. You know, humiliation. I kind of got the two confused, and I thought, so being embarrassed is a good thing? No. When we're talking about humility, we're talking about really the opposite of everything that pride is. So if pride is self-centeredness, humility is God-centeredness. If pride is the love of self, humility is the love of others. If pride is extreme self-esteem, then humility is esteem for others. Humility is the promotion of righteousness, not self. So humility is quite the contrast. And if you notice in this passage, it's obvious if you've been here for the weeks prior that Paul is dealing with a congregation that is extremely proud. They're extremely proud of themselves. Pride has become such a base issue in this church that Paul now has to address it. And did you see how he met their pride? With humility. Okay, let's read verse 6 again. He says, "Now these things, brethren, I have figuratively transferred to myself and Apollos for your sakes." What things is he talking about? What things has he transferred to himself and Apollos? Well, we went through it last week. He calls himself a slave. He says, "I'm figuratively calling myself a slave for your sake." And if you remember last week, we defined the term slave. It's just the most base position in the household. It's the least desired position in the rowboat. It's horrible. Nobody wants to work as a slave. We even, in our culture, for obvious reasons, it carries with it negative connotations. Slavery. And Paul says, I called myself a slave so that you would stop thinking of yourself as a superhero. You got a major problem. So I figuratively started calling me and Apollos slaves and stewards so that it might get through your head that you're out of line. And what they had been doing in their pride is so competing against one another in the church for being a better Christian and all this and that they actually started to use Paul and Apollos as accessories that they could attach to themselves to make themselves look better.